oh shit, like the nightmare is fucking real. This is a fucking nightmare. I had studied sustainability like in business school. Um, and it was very much they were talking about like it was from a sort of ethical, moral perspective, like, oh, companies should do CSR, da 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 da. And I thought, okay, yes, that makes sense, but there's still something that's totally missing from there's a gap. There's a gap between what is being said and what I was being fed relative to what I was able to do, and I was silenced a lot, and I was pushed back whenever I brought up something that seemed to be a bit more systemic in the companies that I was at the time working in. And I was like, there's something I'm missing. There's a history, there's a system, there's a structure, there's something really big that like I am blind to. I'm missing a bit the point. Yeah, I was busy working in the NGO and sort of the Sustainability Inc. space very much. And I had been asking myself a lot of questions. I had also been fired from like a corporate job where I was in the sustainability function for my values. And I felt like either I totally missed something or we had all been duped. Something was not making sense, and or a lot of things were not making sense. The narrative and the discourse relative to what I was allowed to do, what I was doing professionally, were not matching up. I didn't understand. So when I came across the how the course was framed and positioned, and the narrative and the words that were being used, I thought, okay, this makes sense. This seems to be an answer. This will explain a lot of the things that I'm feeling and experiencing and that I'm seeing. Felt like it would give me some answers and some insights. I think for me also there was a lot in the way that the course was positioning, which was really refreshing. Let's say the transparency and like the truth seeking that was also behind it, like behind the wording and the framing, and I thought, oh, finally someone who is isn't full of shit, basically just trying to bullshit around. This is to the point. This is looking for truth. Maybe not the truth, but a truth that a lot of people who are working in this space in the West are not aware of, are denied, and we, like, people are not supposed to know these things or be aware of these things. Yeah. And so I felt very drawn to this essence of truth and transparency and exploration of how things are connected. Yeah. Truth and transparency and perspective, and decentering also the very Eurocentric way in which all these things are communicated and meant to be absorbed, let's say, or designed to be absorbed by practitioners. And that is something that I think, yeah, is very unique, unfortunately, in the world of work and education and business in this part of the world, at least. The essence of truth, transparency, perspective, and complexity also. It's more like, here, this is the truth. Go for it. Don't ask too many questions. So that's super refreshing and very unique, yeah.
And I was going to ask Garry, because I know for you it was a bit different, because you were a coach before you joined as an expeditioner, and you already knew us.
Because of course you were evolving, the course was evolving, it's all very emergent, right? But it hit a point in 2023 where I was just like, I need to do this course. And that's the sort of conversation we had, right? Which is, I stepped down as a coach at that time because it wasn't the right role for me, I felt. And that was the right decision, because someone that works still within the most extractive sector within chemicals, because I'm in sales, so I'm very, growing businesses, building businesses, looking at culture, people, then interfacing with sustainability. So I've had this sort of conditioning, like we all have, but it's through a different lens. So I found it really intriguing to me. Particularly, I found what was really appealing around the course was the design of it. Design in terms of the co-learning, the crewing, but also actually, and I've got to say, Anna, your incredible artistry and the blend of how you brought art and the design of art and the design of the course together. That was really potent for me when I when I really wanted to go on the journey myself, because that then leads to my other really big reason, Anna, while I wanted to sign up. I don't have community. Like, as somebody that looks and sounds like me within the most toxic of sectors, no one's talking about this stuff. Everyone's in deep, 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 deep fear. So to have a cohort of human beings that are at different levels of consciousness, but are willing to go on that uncomfortable journey of unlearning and relearning, that is probably the overarching single biggest draw for me personally as Garry. It's difficult to emphasize just how conditioned corporate life is. Right? I work in a 5 billion turnover, 5,000 employee company. I would never have dreamed of going to the global HR director, honestly, and saying, how is it we shut down the Russian office when Russia invaded Ukraine, and we've said diddly squat about Israel? They're still running. We've still got a business over there, and we're saying nothing about Palestine. So I asked that question of the global HR director within my organization, and I was given, because we thrive on peace and prosperity. That was literally the propaganda that was given back to me as to why Israel still operates and why Russia doesn't. Without going through this course, I would not have built the muscle to be able to even start to know how to reach and have that conversation from within industry. And I know that my work is to be within the industry, trying to be the canary in the coal mine. I know that's my work. Whatever the result is, who knows? But I would not have identified that had I not have gone through the course and built the muscle and the relationships and understood systemically what was, what my own role and the organization's role was and how it impacted up and down the supply chains. So it's a really fascinating course, because it's about, Sustainability Inc. is one of the major hooks, but the layering, the way you've designed it, and the way that no matter what your function is within business or sustainability, it makes sense to you wherever you are on your journey. And I think that's something that's really powerful about what you've designed, is it's very accessible.
The visual aspect, the design aspect, but also the metaphors, the use of metaphors, a bit playful, a bit creative. So all of that I thought was just brilliant. I never saw anything like it up till then, and I haven't seen anything like it, since. So I think that aspect of it, also the exploration, the metaphors, all the little journeys and the videos and everything, it makes it all very tangible and very real, and you can really position yourself not just intellectually, psychologically, but also emotionally in a lot of the content and a lot of the thoughts and the feelings and the stories that you're trying to also bring about within people, within the students and within the participants. Like it works super, super well, and it's super effective. I think without all of the visual and all of the metaphors and all of the, positioning ourselves, with masks or with this or in a ship and like all these kinds of things, going on this journey, I think without all of that, it would, even if the content had been the same, I don't think it would have been quite as effective in drawing people in. So it was really like a immersive journey in a way. Definitely had a big impact on me in terms of the level and the extent to which I was able to integrate and digest and go through things. Yeah.
It's a word that's thrown around too easily in 2025, but it's the right word, which is transformational, going from one state of being to another. And I literally felt that going through the journey of the course, and not just once. There was multiple times when I thought I knew who I was, and I got quite excited and terrified of what I was learning and what that meant for me and my role and my family and how I see the world. And then I got absolutely side punched again, and then it happened again. I can honestly say throughout the course, my 5-month journey, I probably transformed 4 or 5 times from who I thought I was to who I was becoming. And I think that's probably, for me, that's one of the most potent aspects of the course that you've designed, is not only is there the space for that to happen, but you've got the crew, and you're not left on your own to go through that on your own, which is a pretty terrifying experience without being held, in a crew or having the space to process that experience. And I think that's probably one of the overarching ones for me. But I would like to clarify what I mean by transformation, because like I say, it gets batted around quite a lot, but I really mean going from one state of being to another.
To take something out of like psychology, I guess, is like the only way out is through. Not that I will ever, totally come out, but I think the idea of sort of, I'm going to contribute to the decolonization of the field in which I work. But of course, we have to practice for ourselves what we preach or what we try to change or stand for or whatever. And so I think one of the really profound things was the really painful realization of how, by default, many of us, most of us, if not all of us somehow, who are even in the course, are part and parcel of a structure and a system that is oppressive and extractive, and and sort of that whole the guilt and the shame for me, also just coming to terms a lot of my history, my privilege, what it means to be a white woman, all these like there was so much there that needed to first happen. And it was a very raw and very difficult process. I think a lot of it definitely, and the crewing was really important, because within the crews, within those little groups, we could have these really difficult conversations. We became super close and very intimate very fast, because we shared so much like pain and grief, and we cried and we supported each other and everything. And everyone had very different experiences and very different things that came up, and some were similar, some were very different. That phase was the most excruciating one, but also probably the most important one, and sort of having to go through all of that. And I'm still forever going through it, and will, in sort of loops, be popping out here and there. But I think that anything that I do, that I have been able to do since then, in terms of growing and unlearning and using my agency and stuff, is only a reflection of what I was able to do in the dark phase, let's say, as well. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that part is really important. And of course, the course takes you on a journey of continuously putting mirrors. So whereas it's very global, and it's historical and it's global and all of that, the experience is very personal, and it's just mirrors to yourself, and that's tough, but it's the only way that you unlearn and unravel, and then can re-emerge and transform, I think. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to go through the personal sense of like introspection, and also the sense of having to take responsibility for who you are, what you do, where you come from, even past generations, like all of that. I definitely wasn't expecting that. I'm super grateful that it happened, because I do feel liberated somewhat today, and much more at peace with my shame, with my guilt, with my generational oppression, as as a person from the West, or and just like the ways in which I have managed to grow or unlearn, they're a direct reflection of the extent to which I did have to go through some of that. But no, I definitely didn't expect it. No. So the radical responsibility taking and the radical introspection was not what I was expecting, but very grateful for it, because I think there's a direct correlation with the amount of change that you can then bring at the other end. That's what I mean with the only way out is through. So sort of, yeah, that makes sense.
I've never felt safer in a space. Many men aren't used to being in a space that is deliberately designed and co-created for them to feel below the neck. And that's a major part of what you've done so well in the course as well, again, is the accessibility part. Come back to that. I made my mistakes during the course, as we know, and your own boundaries as a navigating crew, right, have evolved throughout the different journeys of the course. But never has it been about shame or guilt. It's always been about boundaries. So I think there's something else I would invite, particularly other men that might be considering to look at the course. You won't be used to being in a space that is so well designed and that has such clear boundaries, because we're used to being able to do what we want, say what we want, act like we want without any reprisal. That's how the system's been set up. So I would invite any men to be brave and courageous and curious and look beyond their own ego and their own fears, and actually look forward to getting really uncomfortable, but never actually unsafe throughout the learning journey and unlearning journey of the course. I think even before we started doing our work together, I was already on a journey of sort of unlearning the aspects of my identity that I would call extremely toxic. So I was already on a bit of a journey around unlearning some of those patterns of behavior, but I had no idea before I found you and the Possible Futures crew as to just how systemic and interconnected those internalized patterns of, you know, anger, frustration, dominance were, right? And again, in and of themselves, you know, they're just reactions, right? But when you see the systems that sit behind why I'm reacting like that, and what's the education I've had and the businesses I work in and the people I surround myself with, going through this journey, and I would say in part of it being because it's been surrounded by a lot of women, and I'd like to see more men in the space for the course. But I am, without a shadow of a doubt, a healthier man in terms of how I see the world, how I interact with other people. And there was a beautiful moment where Katrien asked me when we were in London. She called me out for my racism. And she asked permission and she called me out on it. And I accepted it, and I respect Katrien for doing that. I wouldn't have been able to do that several years ago. So that's why the course is so important. That's why it's so important for me that there are more men and women going through this learning and unlearning journey together, because it is just healthier at every level. And that inner journey piece, it hit me at another level when you're in a group setting, going through that unlearning journey collectively and then processing it in your crew. I am healthier masculine wise, and my strong invitation is for other men to truly get out of their comfort zone and start to enjoy, and I mean enjoy the unlearning process that the course offers, because I'm surrounded by men that are in deep fear.
If I don't remember exactly when I did the course, so like at least, yeah, probably 2 years ago or so. And there's so much to say about the journey that I went on during the course and what has happened since. There was some really fundamental stages that have happened like during and since then, and immediately, like during the course and immediately after, there was that whole the moment of like the, you know, the thing, there's this, everything just sort of exploded, right? So it's that like, oh shit, like, but just this, yeah, the understanding, right? The waking up and realizing the nightmare is fucking real. This is a fucking nightmare. And so for a long time I was like just like in shell shock. I was just like stuck and not really able to move, and just seeing everything, seeing the bullshit everywhere, and seeing the hypocrisy and seeing the oppression and the extraction. I couldn't unsee it. And I remember at that point I was saying, oh, I can't stop reading between the lines, and like I see everything as just bullshit and an agenda. In the sort of areas that I work in here in, you know, in the global north, and then in the Sustainability Inc. space. And everything had a double, you know, what was being fed to you. I kept on looking at, you know, what's underneath it, and what's the structure that's being upheld, and, you know, where's the oppression and the exploitation and the brainwashing, and I just couldn't unsee it, right? So that was a really rough phase, I would say, and that phase is definitely, you know, once you read between the lines, you can't undo that. That's a skill that I feel I learned in the course. And but sort of I think the stage I'm at today, and will continue, you know, the stages will continue until we reincarnate, maybe beyond. I would say, and I'm so grateful for this, and that has been very much in connection also with my own personal journey of overcoming some trauma, or a lot of trauma, and growing and healing, and also finding spirituality and as a way with which to digest a lot of emotions and get to know myself more. Is that I'm more today, much more today, in a space of recognizing the immense power and privilege of an individual person, and also reconciling a lot of the things that I learned, but also but going more in terms of, okay, I have certain beliefs, I understand things in a certain way, I have deep values, and I'm going to center those. So this idea of justice, like justice in the system, also the idea of, and I really do believe this, but I was so detached from this belief, is that, you know, every human life does have the same value. And like, that's essentially like the thing that now pulls and pushes me much more. And so I'm more vocal and I have much more agency to act from that belief system. And that's something that I was really struggling with that in the past. Yeah. Yeah. I'm in a place today professionally where I started to say no to a lot of things, because I would have a conversation from the very beginning, just explain to a potential business partner or whatever company that I may, you know, work with. I would say, you know, I understand the world in this way. So I look at systems and the way you operate as a continuation of, you know, a colonial legacy. And I will say, I will explain that this is how I understand the world, and you may or may not, you know, that may or may not be really uncomfortable. And if it's super uncomfortable, you really don't want to go into any of that kind of stuff, then that's fine. Then we're not the right match. Because I learned that also, if my ability to raise, to make visible systemic issues, and also I always talk about oppression, extraction, and exploitation, like within, that's why Sustainability Inc. is supposed to exist. So I have that narrative, I bring it forward, it makes people uncomfortable, then I say, okay, clearly we're not going to be a good match. But I have to say that actually I have been super lucky to work with some companies where at least the individuals I work with are actually really happy to have that conversation. But I can differentiate between, of course, having the conversation with them behind closed doors, even with some leadership, versus what they then actually go and actually change and do, let's say. But I've had to also settle with some of that.
So I think I know that it's ongoing, right? So I think that's the first thing to acknowledge. And I think personally, since the course, even since before the course, but particularly after going through it, a little bit like what Katrien just said, like I cannot not see the multi-layers of everything, whether it's a drink, a car you're driving, a train you're using, a piece of clothing you're putting, like you just literally see the layers of supremacy culture, oppression, you know, who's getting what money, you know, how the banks operate. Like my mind just literally goes to those like kaleidoscope of like, that's what's going on with every single part, which is exhausting sometimes. And that links to the other thing, which is also finding acceptance. That's not comfort. I want to really distinguish between the two. What I've found with the course has been really, really helpful is reminding myself, because I've literally printed out, I've actually handwritten for after the course, a range of accountability terms, such as don't get comfortable, such as, you know, hold yourself accountable. So every now and again, I will actually have a look at this and go, am I doing that or not? So some would call it values, but it's almost like my two-dimensional accountability buddy when there's not anybody around. And that's not the sort of thing I would have thought about doing before the course. And again, I'm one human being, and that's where the acceptance piece comes in as well. Because as you may remember, saviorism was one of my big patterns, still is one of my patterns, but saviorism was really, really prevalent as I was going through the course. That kept coming up an awful lot. So for me personally, going through the course, like just raising that personal awareness, that personal accountability, but also giving myself some grace and accepting that I am one human being that's been indoctrinated in all of this, and don't get paralyzed in that sort of acceptance. So there's an interesting interplay between those different aspects, I would say, for me personally. How that shows up in the work is, and I've wrestled with this, and to the point where I'll probably go, well, I will, because I've been on the back channel with Lavinia. I think my time's come to actually do the old should I stay or should I go course with her. I'm pretty clear where I'm at, as I mentioned it earlier in our chat, because I do have a very unique perspective because of the course. And I think this is important to note. As a white man with ridiculous amount of unearned privilege, I am able to navigate and say and provoke in a way that most people on the planet can't. And that does come with a little bit of accountability, as long as it's not coming from a place of saviorism and ego. And so this is what I mean about being completely conscious all the time of these different layers. Like every time I go to say I'll do anything, it's like, why am I doing this? Is it to center me? Is it to center the harm being caused? It's like there's just this continuous kaleidoscope of like, like, why am I doing this? And that I wouldn't have known what to look for before the course, but B, my ability to navigate that and not get paralyzed in that complexity is a massive benefit of the course. I feel that I'm being a better version of my human, although it's massively extractive and I'm using way too much of the planets and all the rest of it. Whilst I'm here, I do believe that I'm on my journey towards reducing the amount of harm I cause, and trying to reduce the harm caused from within industry feels a worthwhile endeavor with whatever I've got left. And that's become quite clear throughout my journey based on my context and my own lived experience. None of that was even slightly in my realms of human experience before the course. So yeah, thank you, really. I see it through two layers for me, Anna. So one is at the senior level and within industry, like who can I be having conversations with? Who do I try and nudge? When do I go super like blatant? Okay, like blah, let's go and throw something out there and try and blow it up. Or am I trying to build relations with people and trying to almost have a conversation at the back door with a view to then, so basically it's not one size fits all, as you would expect, is the point. So based on the relationship, as a salesperson within one of the most extractive industries on the planet, I've been reminded throughout the course how relational we are as beings, right? Human, non-human. And that relationality has been oppressed and cancelled for as long as we've been, for generations. Why creativity, right? Witch trials, etc., right? All of this good stuff, not so good stuff, like that's all been there to basically stop creativity. And what I'm seeing within my role, even within the most extractive of sectors, people are starting to question the sector, even if they haven't been on the course that you're offering. There is a general reckoning unfolding, and people are getting curious. People know in their body that this feeling that something doesn't feel right. They can't necessarily put the words or the understanding or the context behind it. They just know it doesn't feel right. And I'm finding that how I'm able to use the learning in reality is by trying to build relationships. Yeah, so within organizations that I work with and within my family, I think this is, to wrap up, this is really critical. My relationship with my wife has transformed over the last 5 years. Like, I'm almost emotional saying it. She's been with me and not ran away every step of the journey as I speak about these things, as I bring these things into her awareness, into our family's consciousness. We're not sitting there around every dinner table talking about this stuff deeply. I'm not going to pretend that. But the ability to sow the seed and to express without fear is massive. And I think if that was a hook for coming into the course, come in terrified and don't think you can speak your truth, leave speaking your truth and still keep your wife, there's your strapline.
It's the best sales pitch ever. Or get a new one, because you'll come out the whole fresh new version if necessary. What I think one of the things that really stayed with me as like a transformation that the course definitely played a big role in is being more able to decenter myself. And although that is a very, that's not what the capitalist system wants us to do, because the more self-centered we are, the more alone we are, the more fearful we are, the more we're totally, easy bait for brainwashing and all of that. And the more we're, not able to also digest things and all of that. Anyway, so I think that the decentering of the self was a really important something that we embodied during the course, right? Because we were challenged to do that, and that stayed with me, and it definitely shifted something. And it's really healing. In that sense, I think the course really helped me to heal some of my trauma, and especially a lot of my fear of being myself and being like more authentic and being more aligned also with, yeah, it's very cliche to say, but being really more aligned with really my human values, like, you know, the core thing that we all do have, but a lot of people are just basically brainwashed not to go there, or just they're you know, all the conditions are created to not be a full human in all of your humility and all that stuff. So I would say that the course definitely helped me to be more authentic and to have more access to those things. And because of that, that's also empowered me. So it's also given me a lot, because I have less fear, I have more agency. And yeah, and the way I navigate, just say that that's also then moved a bit the needle in terms of me being quite outspoken about certain things on LinkedIn and just saying like, whatever, who cares if somebody doesn't like that? I really don't give a shit anymore. Like, you know, I think it's so important for us who have had the chance to go through the course to raise, I mean, to start to have those conversations and to be quite visible with some of these narratives and questions, because so many people are thinking exactly the same thing, that they're, you know, they are stuck, or they believe they're stuck. I mean, that's how they've been conditioned to think about, you know, they're stuck in these little dictatorships or institutions or corporations or whatever, and they are desperate to have conversations. Because like Garry said, there's yeah, a lot of people are feeling that something is totally off. And so yeah, there's a lot of momentum now, and there's a lot of, like, we have a responsibility, I think, maybe to, having gone through the course, and if we have a bit less fear and we have a bit more agency and we can be more in our humility and more in our authenticity, like, it's super rewarding to actually use that. And it took me a while to understand that, but now I find it really rewarding, and it creates something, and it draws people who are willing and able. And I do just differentiate between those that are willing to have the discussion, for example, in a corporation, but they're not really able to change things because of, you know, how it's designed and structured, etc. And just yeah, just share, you know, share the to make it sound religious or whatever, but, you know, share the light that we now have, and use it as a platform also to yeah, to allow others to also ask some questions and maybe make some movements and some changes as well. Definitely also it's a learning path, and it's a growth, and like I said, like, I hope this growth continues in my reincarnation, so I don't expect it ever to end. But absolutely, one of the really important things, I think, also is to be compassionate with ourselves, and yeah, to give ourselves humility for the mistakes that we've made and the things that we didn't know and the things that we did know, but we did anyway, which were part of the problem. But that's part of taking responsibility and owning your agency, is also looking back and just also being, at the end of the day, compassionate and kind and having humility towards yourself. So the course definitely laid, you know, planted seeds and created shifts within me that allowed me to go on these kinds of journeys in the last 2 years, 3 years. Yeah.
Personas, masks, metaphors. Those are really the juice. As I've listened to our reflections collectively, they are the leverage points for me that are so special about what you've co-designed. And thank you for the space to reflect. I appreciate it today.
Yeah, I also want to share my gratitude, because it's super rewarding in a sort of selfish way, to reflect back on that. It feels really good. And on the other hand, it's also kind of humbling to look back and say that that was quite hard. Like, there was some really difficult stuff that I had to go through personally because of the mirrors and the introspection journey that the course, you know, encouraged me to go down. So definitely the decentering, but decentering not as a negative thing, but as a incredibly relieving and healing thing. That's something that I take away. And on the one hand, yes, reading between the lines is excruciating once you start doing it, and then it becomes sort of liberating too. So everything sort of seems to have like two sides to it. So the difficult side, but then when you go through the difficult side, you know, that reading between the lines, seeing the agenda, seeing the system, like it, yeah, it's excruciating, but you also come out, I mean, it is also liberating. And you are able to move. So I think also that's probably the other two bits is the truth initially, you know, I don't even know how to explain it exactly. It just fucks you up, basically. And then it does set you free. This is something I think I had said before, as a person. And then when I say set you free, it means that at that moment you feel I need to do something because I give a shit and because I see something and I can do something differently and I can be part of something that is better and that is different.
Dancing with paradox. That to me is one of the biggest USPs, I think, of the course for men who are conditioned to go, this is the only way to do something. If they don't follow my demand, therefore they are not good or they are not worthy. So I just wanted to just reiterate that point of, particularly for men, I think, as a sort of the ability to get uncomfortably comfortable with navigating paradox is a massive, massive benefit of the course. And that's one of the biggest things I've taken away